You are listening to ProveText, a Glossa House podcast exploring Scripture with Dr. T. Michael W. Halcomb and Dr. Frederick J. Long. Welcome and enjoy.
Hello and welcome to ProveText. I am Michael Halcomb and I'm here with my friend and Glossa House author and all kinds of stuff, Professor Steve Reasor. You go by Steve, yeah, not Steven. Or do you go by Steven? Does it matter?
Well, it doesn't really matter. Most people call me Steve that know me, but I always sign stuff Steven. So
okay, yeah, that's a lot of people call me Mike, Michael, whatever. It does not matter to me. Yeah, well, so we have Steven Reasor with us, and Steve's a professor in Canada. And so tell us a little bit about that.
I'm at Burman University, which is a small Christian university right in the middle of Alberta. And so I've been up here in Alberta for a couple of decades now. I'm originally from Oklahoma. I'm American, but I met a girl, ended up up north. That sometimes happens. But yeah, we've been here for a couple of decades now. Enjoyed up here very much and enjoyed teaching for sure.
Great. So a big part of what you're doing up there and what I really want to dial into today is the stuff that you're doing with Greek. So tell us a little bit about your journey with Greek. Like, when did you first start getting into Greek, and what have been some, I guess, milestones or even turning points along the way?
Yeah, so like a lot of my students, when I decided to go into a religious studies degree that was leading towards pastoral ministry, I resisted, and part of my trepidation was I knew I had to take Greek and Hebrew, and it's scary to have to take a new language, and
right.
And so I resisted, and then when I got to my first day of class of Greek, I had a great Greek teacher who was very enthusiastic, very encouraging. Made the process enjoyable, and I just loved it. It was my favorite class in undergrad.
Wow!
So that was back in '90. Well, I guess that was in '98.
Okay.
And so after that, every time I got a chance to use Greek, I did, because I saw the potential for biblical studies. When I taught at a high school for a couple of years, and I did a little Greek class with some high school students as an options class, and just really, I enjoyed it. When I made the shift from pastoral ministry into teaching is kind of when I sat down and kind of had to reorient myself as to how I was going to go about teaching Greek and what I wanted to do. When I took it in undergrad, it was a 12-credit Greek program, so it's 4 semesters of Greek. And it was compacted into 2 semesters.
Oh,
so
wow.
It was a very intense kind of, you went to Greek every day, and it was in some ways sort of immersive that way, because it was consuming. And
right.
I enjoyed that. I found it helpful. And so when I started teaching here at Burman, that was the first thing I did. First year, I said, let's switch over and really compact Greek into a more intense kind of experience. It's better that way. Instead of doing a little bit here and there over a couple of years, it's better just to jump in and let it be a full experience. The other thing that was kind of happening at that time too, is this is back in 2015, was I was starting to look around of what resources there were out there. And I'd seen a few and had actually gotten a couple of different programs that were using this this new idea of learning Greek as a living language, as reviving Koine era Greek, Hellenistic Greek, as something that's spoken. And that just fascinated me from the very first kind of interaction that I had. I felt immediately like I was going back to the very beginning and starting all over learning Greek, because hearing Greek, I couldn't tell you anything that was being said. And I realized I don't know Greek. I can read it some maybe and parse things, but that's not a knowledge of a language at all.
Right.
If I can't
Right.
speak it and hear it, it's a problem.
Yeah, you know
So
about it, right? There's a difference in knowing it and
yeah,
knowing about it. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. So like I said, I'd tried out a couple different programs, and uh, I even my first year full-time teaching, I brought in some elements of that, and the reality was they were helpful to a degree, but then
Yeah.
there was nothing after that,
Right.
and the tools that were there weren't immersive like I was looking for. And so I think it was in 2017, if I'm recalling correctly.
Mm.
I happened to wander by a little booth at an SBL conference, the Glossa House booth, and met up with you and Fred, and we're just looking at some of the things you guys were doing, and started to think about some possibilities of what would I want if I could have anything for my students to learn with? What would I want that to look like?
Right.
Um, and I realized I would want them to have the experience of learning the language by ear first,
Yeah.
so that they can hear and understand, and then be able to speak. And once those two components were in place, teach them how to read it.
Yes.
And that's you guys have that philosophy, and have that approach to it. So I was super excited to start developing a series of ebooks that would have embedded videos, embedded interactive self-grading quizzes that would help students be able to do the majority of language learning outside of class time, and then come to class to sharpen things and to learn some of the grammar and syntax, those kind of things that are necessary to learn. But as far as my goal is, are secondary. So
Yeah.
if I can read and understand what's going on, and I don't understand grammar and syntax, that's better than if I have a great knowledge of grammar and syntax but can't actually read it. I'll just never use it.
Yeah, that's great. And I know think this, but another part of that is just getting students to enjoy and love the language, right? Like
Yeah,
that's rather than you were talking about like so many seminary and Bible college students have that like yeah, just resist and then like dread, like absolute dread.
right. Yeah,
Whereas we can flip the narrative and say, "Nah, this is fun." Like, and it's a joy to actually like work with the language, and so
hmm,
yeah. I mean, I think for me that's been one of the biggest motivators is how do we make the language fun and convince people. A big part of my own teaching philosophy: convince people from day one that they can do this and be good at it.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because so many students come into the Greek classroom, they've never taken another language,
yeah,
or if they have, it was some half baked language class, Spanish or something in high school. They didn't really have to try, but you know, yeah, you can be really good at this. You can actually have fun with it. Yeah.
yeah.
So
Totally.
you're the resources that you're creating, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, they look fun. Before we talk about those on the next side of the break, I just want to ask what has been the reception that you've received from, like, what's feedback you've gotten from folks, your students, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, the feedback's been overwhelmingly positive. So I'd say the enjoyment level of my students is very, very high. We
Mm,
have a great time in class. I mean, it's fun to learn new language, to try it out, to make mistakes and joke with each other, and we keep a very my classes have a very low stress level
yes,
in them, and that's intentional. I want them, like you
yes,
were saying, if students learn better if they're not stressed out.
yep,
And at the same time, the interesting thing is, at the same time, is the amount of stuff they're learning is much higher.
yes,
So my students are learning 10 new vocab items a day,
yeah, without
and
trying.
without trying. They
Yeah.
just know what it is. And I just had actually a peer evaluation with another faculty member come in just 2 weeks ago.
Hmm.
And this is someone who's visited Greece quite a bit, goes every year, and just he was so encouraged and encouraged of my students. Said, "You guys, you're only a month into school, and you guys are doing so great. Like the amount that you know already. And do they know everything? Of course not. Are
Right.
they, they've got lots to learn still, but." If they can walk into a classroom and I can put a phrase on the board or say a phrase to them, and they just don't have to try to access uh, a card that they've looked at, but
Right.
it's just they hear it in their ear or they see it and they're like, oh yeah, I know what that is.
Yeah.
It makes it so much more fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's encouraging to hear. That's really encouraging to hear.
And on top too, we've been doing research along with this as part of this project.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been actually testing the students with weekly exams to see how they're doing with vocabulary retention, because that's kind of that's the boogeyman in the Greek world, is how long
Yeah.
do you retain
Right.
that vocab. And if you know the big rings with all the flashcards,
Yep.
you know, back from our day when we were studying. And nowadays, of course, it's all on digital apps,
Right.
you
Right.
know. And what we found is there is a statistically significant improvement when students learn it intuitively through watching a video where it's all contextualized. A statistically significant improvement in initial retention, and even more so in long-term retention.
Man, that's
Which
encouraging.
is really encouraging. That means years down the road, they'll if they pick up a Greek New Testament
Yeah.
or Septuagint, it's going to come back pretty quick.
Yeah. Wow. Will those research results be published somewhere? I'd love for you to, if that comes through Glossa House or wherever, I'd be so stoked to like see those results. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I'm working with a couple of research partners. We're starting the process of crunching data. You know how that goes, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's a grueling process, but yeah, it is certainly in the process of being sorted and looked at.
Interested in growing your ancient language skills but not sure where to start? Glossa House can help. From illustrated readers and short stories to lexicons and grammars, Glossa House offers a variety of resources for beginning, intermediate, and experienced ancient language learners. Head to glossahouse.com today. Glossa House, language resources for the global community.
When I first started creating resources and I started pitching them to publishers like Zondervan and Baker, they didn't want anything to do with them, right?
Yeah.
They had no confidence, no vision to see that Greek would ever go this direction, like teaching Greek pedagogy
Mhm.
would ever go in the direction of speaking or listening, or so they wanted the sort of mounts. Let's get some vocab lists and grammar books, Dan Wallace, and those things have the rightful
Mhm.
place. I'm not beating up on
Absolutely.
those, but I'm just saying the other publishers couldn't see beyond that sort of model. And Glossa House has sort of been out at the front of this since around 2010, 2011, charting the way to create these resources, and we're starting to see, I think, something of a tide turn or a renaissance even in the
Mhm.
creation of Greek resources, and you're a part of that. So tell us about what project you've got going on in particular.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so my project, Glossa House, has invited me to start writing. So I was initially the author, and then I've taken over as series editor for the Koine Immersion series. And this series is, as its name suggests, the purpose of it is to simply immerse students in an audio and a visual experience of the language. Uh, there's again, so I'm not recreating grammars. There's so many good grammars
Mm-hmm.
out there already. I do talk a bit about grammar and syntax within the series, but it's surface. It's just like the the absolute essentials. But the biggest thing we do is we learn vocab, and we learn it contextually through illustrated videos that are like story based, so that you're learning words and you're seeing things happen on the screen at the same time. So the series, it's a pretty ambitious project. We're just reaching the halfway milestone of it, and it's been probably 3.5 years now that I've been working on it. And so we're going to have at least that much probably still to go for the next half. But we're able to release a couple of volumes a year. We've been on track to do that. And this is what it looks like. It's when it's done, it'll be 12 e-volume with 4 accompanying workbooks. And so basically I've set it up around a semester system of 4 semesters of Greek, which is at least in my faith group, our universities all do 4 semesters of Greek. And so I've kind of set it up, and I know other universities do some different things. But having the 12 steps that you take, it's actually pretty flexible. You can use it in a quarter system or semester system, either way. But the 12 volumes basically take students from a 0 to the end of like an intermediate Greek level. And so we have in each of the 4 levels, we've got 3 ebooks and a workbook, and they work together really closely. My philosophy with it is I want to expose students to a lot of material, but to do it in the right way.
Right.
And so what they'll do is they'll go in, a typical night of homework for them is to go in and they'll watch this illustrated video, and it'll be between 15 and 20 minutes long. And they'll watch it, and they'll watch it again, and they'll watch it again. I tell them to spread it out over the day, and I'd say watch it at least 3 times. And every time you watch, you're going to understand more of what's happening. And then they'll do a worksheet that helps. As the first worksheet is usually them just recognizing some of the grammatical forms that they're learning. And then the next day for homework, they're going to watch the same video again, except for this time there's going to be Greek subtitles so that they can start, because again, we want them learning it by ear. We want them repeating it, but then we start training them to be literate and recognize what the words look like that they've already learned. And the powerful thing about this, Michael, is that there's when you know a word by ear and you know what it means, when you find out what it looks like, your brain just learns that as a single unit then. So that students can look at a word and they recognize the whole word instead of trying to sound out each individual letter. It's a very different experience for them.
That's wonderful.
So I'll just quickly outline kind of what each level, what you learn in each level and each volume. So the first volume is just an introduction to Greek, to Koine Greek. What is Koine Greek or Hellenistic Greek or Alexandrian Greek or whatever it's called. So you learn your letters. You learn numbers 1 to 100. You learn some elementary kind of greetings. We actually have my students use your book, Conversational Koine. We use phrases out of that, and they learn, proper nouns. They pick a Greek name for themselves, so we can talk to each other in Greek in class. The second volume, we start learning some of the details. So we learn nominative and accusative substantives. At the same time, we're learning about verbs. So immediately we put so we don't learn all the noun declensions first. We start with nominatives, and then we tie them together with verbs of being, and then we add accusatives, and we are able to use then like transitive verbs then. Right. And so that's the second volume. Then they're learning to put some very basic sentence structures together. In the third volume, we then toss the genitives and datives in there. We learn middle and passive present tense verbs as well then. And so they're starting to see some of the complexities of the language by the end of the first volume. That's the end of the first quarter or semester of Greek. And at that point, they'll have learned over 300 vocab items.
Excellent. Wow.
By that point. And again, it's like when I went through Greek after 4 semesters, I think I knew like 450 vocab items. And it was just meager, like it was just barely enough to to get through. And so what we do is we're learning that there's two sets of vocab items that they're learning. One are the most common. So, okay, volume one's going to have like the top 20 most common words in the New Testament. And then, some other words added in. Volume 2, we learned parts of the body as well as other common words. Volume 3, we learned animals and colors, as well as, again, the common. And so what we're doing is I'm making sure they know the most common ones, and then I'm helping them to learn the ones they're most likely to use if they were to be talking to other people.
Right.
It's just the really common words that it'd be important for them to know.
Excellent. And then so that's volume 4. You're working with. Did you already talk like volume 4? You're going to like future, from past to future, like you're doing.
That's right. Yes, yeah. So in volume 4, then we talk about the future tense and we talk about the aorist tense. And I know almost everybody teaches Greek. You learn the imperfect before you learn the aorist. And I reversed that. And the reason for that is that the concept of aorist is way easier for students to understand than the concept of the imperfect, because it's just the simple past tense.
Yeah.
The other reason is that the future tense and the aorist, the future and aorist have this really weird relationship form-wise.
Yeah.
And so it's easier to learn them together, and it's been very effective. So we do that. Volume 5, then we learn the middle passive, the aorist passive and the future passive. But we learn those separately from the middles because, of course, they're different forms. And then we learn the imperfect in Volume 5. And then Volume 6, we finish off with the perfect and pluperfect, or past perfect. So by the end of Volume 6, when you reach the end of Level 2, you're done with the elementary Greek level. You know all of your indicative verbs and all your substantives.
Mm-hmm. And you also have a teacher edition, right? Resource and a student resource.
That's right.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So for each level, there's a workbook for students, and the workbook it has student learning objectives and lesson plans. So for like a student who wants to learn on their own, and even for my students, they really appreciate that. There are worksheets, and there's a reader section. So all the slides from all the videos are in the reader section, so you can practice going through and practice your reading. And I have my students do that, and it really helps to ingrain it there.
And you'll be creating a teacher edition for each level?
That's correct. Yeah. And so, the teacher edition, of course, has all the answers for the worksheets. There's also something called Koine in the Classroom, and that's a section in the back that has a bunch of different phrases that are useful in the classroom, like, sit down, stand up, be quiet, open your book, to, those kind of commands and things, as well as like a lesson plan for every lesson. So I have got a set of activities, and I have accompanying PowerPoints with like pictures and things. And so we always do a review of what they learned the previous night. We do a couple of activities where they're speaking in Koine Greek or writing in Koine Greek or doing something to use the knowledge that they've learned. And then we finish off the class by previewing what they're going to learn the next evening. And so all the grammar and syntax they always learn twice. They learn it at the end of class, and then they review it at the beginning of the next class.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, you got a whole just suite of stuff resources you've created here, and it looks good. I mean, and your the themes of your volumes, like the first one, Welcome to Koine, Substantives in Action, Volume 2, Going With It, Volume 3, Past to Future, Volume 4. You have They Went to the Market, Volume 5, House Has Been Built, Volume 6. Where's it heading? What's to come?
All right. Well, in the next level, we've got the 3 volumes, and we're going to be looking at the other moods outside of the indicative mood, so the subjunctive, optative, and imperative. We're going to be looking at adjectives and adverbs and clauses and particles along with that, and we're going to be learning some special vocab for relationships and the military and furniture and tools in the next levels, the next 3 volumes.
Excellent. So
And then
go ahead.
oh,
Yeah.
I was going to say, and then in the fourth level, the fourth level, we finish off with infinitives and participles, and we spend quite a bit of time then doing so we'll do applied exegesis. So we'll do a lot more. We get a little bit into scripture in the first level, a little more in the second, a little more in the third, and we just do a deep dive into scripture because by then you've got the tools to kind of navigate your way through scripture.
Well, the question I always am asked when I'm teaching Greek this way, so do you think I could go to Greece and talk to people and I say, there's a chance that they're probably going to understand you, but modern Greek is such that you might not understand them, right? The pronunciation's different. And the statistic I read a long time ago was something to the effect of a native Greek speaker could probably understand 60 to 70% of a Koine speaker, reading Koine.
Okay. I would have guessed maybe about 30%, but
really?
yeah,
Wow.
but I believe that it's an amazingly conservative language.
Yeah.
I tell my students when they say thank you in first century Greek, they're saying the exact same word.
Right.
Exact same word as Greeks still use.
Yeah, if Greek hadn't gone through that eoticism or iticization, right, where everything turned into iota, it would, man, it would be even, the consistency would be way greater. But that's one of the main differences that poses a challenge. But yeah, I think it sounds like where you get your students to, they could probably go through Greece and at least make their way around.
Yeah, I think they would. They would be surprised maybe at how much they understood reading things, and even it's not hard either. I've spent some time hearing native modern Greek speakers, and it doesn't take too long before you start to get that yoticization kind of, okay, I get, they say that way, right? That's all an E sound. Yeah.
Right.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's just, again, it's just a pronunciation thing, not a.
Yeah. Almost even just like a dialect thing. You could almost chalk it up to that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But man, you got a lot of great stuff going on. Congratulations on the progress you've made, and I'm thrilled you're working with Glossa House. That's a boon for us. So,
oh, thank you. Yeah, it's great to be part of the Glossa House team.
Yeah. So we're really excited about that. We're firing on a lot of different cylinders with Greek and Hebrew in particular. Those two languages. There's so many great resources coming out. We have a new teachers and student book for Hebrew that are dropping in just the next couple of weeks too.
That's exciting.
That are really cool. But yeah, so lots of great stuff, and we're glad to be partnering with you on that. One of the things we do at the end of our episodes, we always have this thing we call a parting shot, and it's just a quote. And so you have a quote that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I just wanted to share my favorite quote, and it is, "The larger the island of knowledge, the longer the shoreline of mystery."
Yeah,
the greater we
really
increase what we know, the more we realize that we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, when you're an undergrad, you kind of feel like, oh, I know it all. When you get to your master's, you're kind of like, oh, there's some things. When you get to your doctorate, you're like, I don't really know anything.
So true.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, Steve, thanks for being on ProveText, and those are always great catching up with you, and we'll see you soon in Denver. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it, man. Thanks so much for the invite. Glad to be with you today.